Now then, it is LGFA quarter-finals weekend. On Saturday we've got three of the games. We've got Dublin versus Cork at 1:15 in Parnell Park. Galway are up against Waterford at 3:15 in Tuam. And then at 7:30 in Tralee, it's Kerry versus Kildare. And then the last quarter-final happens on Sunday at 5:15 in Navan, and that sees Meath go up against Tip. Five-time All-Ireland winner with Cork, Doireann O'Sullivan, is with us on the line. Doireann, how are you getting on?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. So let's start with Dublin versus Cork. Presumably, whenever you think of Dublin, there's mixed emotions. Quite obviously, the main rival for your great Cork team. I think it was 3 victories in finals, 2 finals defeats. So good memories and bad memories mixed in there, Doireann.
Yes, definitely a mixed bag, as you said. But when you do hear Cork and Dublin and ladies football, it is a pulsating encounter, to be honest. I think both teams have had ups and downs throughout the league and the group stages. So I think we're in for an absolute cracker on Saturday.
So 5 out of the last 11 All-Ireland, or what is it? So if we go back through the last 3 years, we've had Dublin appear in the All-Ireland 2 years ago, and Cork obviously haven't appeared in any of the finals in the last 3 years. If you go back through the 11 All-Irelands prior to that, I don't think there's a single All-Ireland where Dublin or Cork aren't actually in the final lineup. So is there something of a changing of the guard, a little bit of a hiatus maybe from a Cork perspective here that other counties are now driving in to take the limelight?
Yeah, like if you look at those teams, you know, from those 10, 11 All-Irelands, there are still a couple of core players from both teams still involved. So you'll be looking at the likes of them on Saturday. You know, Maura O'Callaghan was involved, Anya Terry, Hannah Looney would have been there, Shauna Kelly. And then if you look at the Dublin side, you know, Sinead Goldrick, Leah Caffrey, Hannah Tyrrell, they were all involved. So those girls, like whether you look at it from a loss or a victory, have a lot on the line on Saturday, and it does go back. That Dublin Cork history, as you said, goes back an awful long time now. So I'd say now there'll be skin and hair flying on Saturday, especially for those girls, those 5 or 6 who, you know, are still hanging on in there. And yeah, there'll be no love lost between those two teams anyway.
I can imagine. So if we go through the Cork form, first of all, they're in this round after beating Mayo 3-8 to 110 in their last game. That was a fairly nip and tuck game when you look back on it. Cork had a big early lead, then a late Mayo goal, which does hit the back of the net, would have levelled it at that point, but then it was called back for a square ball after that. So really Mayo, who were in a relegation playoff this weekend, could have knocked Cork out on that occasion. So it was really hair's breadth stuff.
Yeah, it really was. And like you said, now Mayo looking at a relegation battle. You look at Armagh, who were just narrowly defeated by Kildare, now looking at a relegation battle. So I think that just shows how far ladies football have come. Like when I saw that Cork group of Kerry and Mayo, you know, it could have been any 2 of the 3 teams to go forward. So I do think that is one thing that is notable from all the groups. You know, they were all nip and tuck. But as you said, that goal that, you know, was disallowed, I think that's key for Cork on Saturday. If they can keep Dublin not to get a goal, I think that's crucial, because like if you look at the Kerry game, group game as well, Kerry got 5 goals, you know. So I think that if they can keep Dublin's full forward line at bay, that's going to be huge for Cork on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised at how big a price Cork are in the betting. Like, they're not favourites for this All-Ireland, and a lot of people in Cork would accept that. But is there some level of surprise within the county that they've been written off to this degree?
I suppose, you know, when you get relegated to Division 2, I don't know, you have to probably swallow that pill, unfortunately. Like, they did compete Division 2 this year. They didn't compete in a Munster final. So, like, that's kind of the situation they're in and the hand they've been dealt at the moment. But I certainly wouldn't be writing them off. You know, you've the likes of Amy Corcoran, Abby O'Mahony, you know, Rosie Corkery, they've all staked a claim on the team this year, and those were names that, you know, weren't household names this year, and they've blended in lovely. So I think, you know, within the dressing room, the girls are quite happy, would be quite happy to be underdogs. You know, it's not always a bad place to be.
We have Hannah Looney flying the dual flag still at this point because Cork have got safe passage through to the Camogie semi-finals. There's no clash this weekend. It could have been dealing with headlines over the next couple of days with regards to Hannah Looney's situation. But obviously there's been a couple of moments where she's had some close shaves, I guess, this year with regards to fixtures being in close proximity or clashing with one another. It does feel that, the unfortunate reality is that the Camogie and LGFA crossovers are getting more frequent. It's a little bit harder to be a dual player, whereas in years gone by, the best thing about the game was that the women were able to play both codes in a way that the men just weren't able to.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it, that we're still talking about this. It's just kind of mind-boggling, to be honest. And it puts the girls in an awful position. Imagine being the best in both codes, like, as in, you're lucky to be good at one sport. The three girls involved, Aoife Healy, Libby Coppinger and Hannah Looney, they're the best in both, and to be punished nearly for that, it's mad. Like, it's still, there's enough weeks in the year, at the start of the year with calendar fixtures to just agree whether that be, even like the girls understand, the way the split season has gone, that might be them playing on the Saturday and the Sunday, which I would imagine they'd be more than happy to do. They understand that side, but having the same day clashes, like the last day now, they had to split. I think Libby went with Camogie and Aoife and Hannah went with football. And, even that disrupts the camp on the week up to championship. There's whispers in the dressing room, who do we have this weekend? Or, are the Camogie taking theirs? Or the Camogie isn't knockout, or ours isn't knockout, so maybe they'll get preference. And all that, like, when you're putting so much time into it, is just background noise that the girls really don't need, at this stage of the year.
How do they tend to make that call? Is it based on opposition?
I don't know, to be honest. It is left up predominantly to management between the Camogie and football management. I don't think the girls weigh in themselves, because, again, that puts them in a very awkward position. Some are clear-cut decisions, like it's a Munster Championship and another game is finishing a league competition, or, those ones are easy enough decisions. But, they have been put in very, very, very tough positions where they've been both knockout competitions. You've trained since November in pre-season, and it's not fair on the girls or their teammates, to be honest.
When amalgamation happens, this kind of needs to be top of the agenda in terms of something to be very mindful of and to have measures in place to guard against, because, as I say, that the horse is bolted on the men's side of things, and because it's not a problem in the men's game anymore because there are no dual players, you'd fear that people will assume that it's no longer a problem, full stop. But it's absolutely something that is still very prevalent, and there's still great opportunities for the women to play both codes, because I can't imagine it's any issue for the managements of either the Camogie teams or the LGFA teams.
Yeah, like, I don't know, does a decision have to be made that it's not feasible going forward with the split season, and the girls are told that at the beginning of the year that they have to make a decision, like the men now have to? Or is it a case that they can, as you said, with the amalgamation, just sit down at the start of the year and do what's right and put the players' best interests at heart? Like, I feel Cork aren't the only county. You've Tip have dual players, you've Galway have dual players, Dublin. So it is tricky to navigate, but I do think the girls have put enough into it and have been great, advocates for the sport, that they do deserve that much at least, yeah.
On the Dublin side of things, they are Leinster champions. They beat Meath by 4 points in the Leinster final. That was way back in May, so that doesn't really inform the form going into this game. But this quarter-final, this is the stage where they got knocked out last year, so they'll be keen to make sure that it doesn't happen again. It seems like a very motivated Dublin side.
Yes, yeah, and if you look at their team, they have that leadership and that know-how nearly in every line of the pitch. If you take their full-back line, Leah Caffrey's all-star, Sinead, half-back line, Sinead Goldrick, and all the way up the pitch, they have those leaders. So I think those girls will know that they'll want to go one step further this year. And it is just hard not to nearly get a shiver down your spine when you look at that full forward line of Hannah Tyrrell, Niamh Heatherton and Kate Sullivan. That's kind of a frightening full forward line. Normally, you've kind of one marquee forward where that's really the three girls need to be minded. And if you think back to the Cork Mayo game, I think there was a 12-minute stoppage, something like that. And one of Cork's man markers, Shauna Kelly, went off injured. So if she's available on Saturday or not, it is key as well, because she would have been given that job to pick up one of those girls. So I think that full forward line is key for Dublin, because Cork have been conceding a couple of goals, and that Dublin full forward line are well able to get them.
That game against Galway last year was an absolute classic. And I think Dublin felt they might have had the game won on a couple of occasions, and Galway just kept at them and caused a pretty significant upset at the time. And then when all is said and done and Kerry end up being All-Ireland champions, part of me wonders, do Dublin look at Kerry winning the All-Ireland last year and think to themselves, you didn't beat us and we beat you comfortably the previous year in the All-Ireland. There might, from a dub perspective, there might just be a little asterisk beside last year's All-Ireland win. And this year, I just kind of get the sense they'd love to be back in that environment and say, right, beat us this time, Kerry.
Yeah, definitely. That's the way my mentality would work anyway. You know, when you reflect on the year, whether you're knocked out of quarter or semi-final, you nearly take a bit of solace in that. You know, Kerry have won nothing up against Dublin, you know, from last year. So it was Galway who knocked Dublin out. So they'll definitely take a bit of comfort in that. I know I would have as well. So yeah, look, I feel just that Cork Dublin tradition, that game Saturday will take on a life of its own. Huge physicality around that middle eight on both sides, and that Dublin midfield is pretty new and fresh. So it's just getting that mix and blend of, you know, the experienced players with the new girls. But, you know, it's interesting because both teams are kind of in a similar position that way. And both have, you know, some household names in ladies football. And, you know, if you look at that Leinster final, Sophie McIntyre got player of the match, which wouldn't, you know, have been a household name. So I feel like trying to get that blend, and it is a big stage on Saturday. You just hope those girls, who it is their first year or first season starting, that they don't let the occasion get the better of them, as sometimes happens.
Who's going to win this game?
I will never bet against Cork, so I'll stick with Cork. I think it'll be very close, and I think if Cork can tighten up at the back, and that battle in the full back line against Dublin's full forward line is going to be key on Saturday. But I am going to give Cork the nod. I think, you know, Joe Carroll has got a good mix. They always had strong runners, but they've brought in that kicking game. And I think Anya Terry being back on the Cork panel is huge this year because she's an unbelievable ball winner. She got player of the match there the last day against Mayo. So it does take that bit of pressure off Katie Quirk inside, that she has Anya Terry with her inside.
Right, well, that's a big call, to be fair. They are a big prize for the weekend, but it looks of things. To be fair, it looks like Kildare and Tipperary are being given less of a chance, and the outsider that's the closest to the favourite in any of these games is Waterford, who are away to Galway. So all the home teams really are raging hot favourites going into this weekend. So let's just talk about this Kerry-Kildare game then. And before we get on to Kerry, Kildare being, you know, one of the stories of the year. Knocking out Armagh in the last round was an absolutely huge moment in the direction of this year's All-Ireland Championship. They did finish bottom of their Leinster group before dumping Armagh out. And now Armagh, they were without Clodagh McCambridge and Aoife McCoy. Amy Mackin comes on for just the last 5 minutes, and that was just her first appearance of the season. So maybe it was a weakened Armagh, you could argue. But still, it's Armagh, and Kildare have done nothing yet at this level. So that it was an extraordinary result, and the confidence and momentum that comes with it must be huge.
Yeah, like that was the shock of the year so far, to be honest. At the beginning of the year, I would have had Armagh in the top 2 or 3, you know, to contest for the Brendan Martin. But Kildare gave us a shock. And to be fair, they deserved the win in the end. As you said, it was, you know, a slightly lesser Armagh team. But Kildare will go in on Sunday with a lot of confidence. I just don't know, have they enough at this level done to compete and stay with Kerry? Yeah, it's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's hard to get a read on this Kildare team just yet until we've seen a little bit more of them. But even and you go through like their scores the last day against Armagh, brilliant spread of scores. 9 different people got on the score sheet, but they don't really have a talisman. But maybe there's a case here where there's actually going to be 4 or 5 star players that emerge as the years go by. It kind of feels like we could be looking at the next meet here, or we could be looking at a team who've caused a one-off shock. And at this moment, personally speaking anyway, I don't really know which of those two things we're witnessing.
Yeah, and it's exciting, I suppose, going into Saturday that you don't know what we're going to get. And it's a breath of fresh air, I suppose, that there's a new team competing in All-Ireland quarter-final stages. But as you said, you don't know, is it kind of a flash in the pan, or are they going to back it up on Saturday? But 9 different spread of scorers, I would consider better than, one marquee forwards going 12 players, because Kerry have the defenders to, close up shop there on one defender, but 9 different scorers is exciting and a positive for Kildare.
Kerry obviously have had a lot of turbulence in the off-season, necessary turbulence. I mean, like, the management did well to commit for one final year last year and they got over the line. Obviously, Louise Moore-Hurtig exits the stage after a glittering career. AFLW plays a part in a different squad this year as well. They seem to have handled it okay, Doireann, or what's your read on Kerry?
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? I secretly was nearly hoping for a big clear out and that if they would start rebuilding and everything, but they have hit the ground running in 2025. Yeah, so I just feel like Schaefer O'Shea, Danielle O'Leary up front, like, oh my God, Schaefer O'Shea, the strength, like, they can nearly just like throw any sort of a ball into her and she's going to win it, like, or make something happen. So when you have that inside, like, it's very hard to defend. You play her from the front, there's a ball in over the top, you compete with her in the air, she's too strong. Like, she's kind of taken over ladies football at the moment. Like, she's incredible to watch, to be honest. It's very exciting to watch her play. Even down in Clodove, like, they only performed really, Kerry, for 30 minutes, but that 30 minutes of football against Cork was incredible. Like, it was flawless. So when Kerry click, they look unbeatable. The thing is, they've only performed, even the Cork Kerry game in the group stages the last day, they only performed for 30 minutes in the second half. So that is a worry for Kerry, in that I don't think you're going to win in All-Ireland, only playing for 30 minutes. So they'll have to get that up to 40, 45 minutes out of the 60, because I don't think that's going to be enough, But yeah, Kerry are looking raging hot favourites from my point of view at the moment anyway.
Yeah, and they would argue that the point I made earlier on about Dublin in 2023 was that they were missing a fully fit Schaefer O'Shea on that occasion, when I know she comes on in that All-Ireland final after the ACL, but to all intents and purposes they were shorn of her talents. So maybe Dublin weren't actually that far ahead of Kerry 2 years ago either. They're favourites to win the All-Ireland. Is that fair enough in your view?
Yeah, I think that's warranted. Like, even they played a lot of league this year without Caught, midfield, and Anna Galvin there. They've so much experience and talent. And I think Kerry's kicking game is gone unbelievable. So, like, that ball into the full forward line is very hard to stop. I think if Kildare do want to compete with Kerry on Saturday, they're going to have to slow down that ball going in, and that mid late is going to be huge. Get tackles in, get hits in around there, that the ball going in is slow, or that Kildare have time to get back, or whatever it is. Because when Kerry get fast ball into the likes of Danielle and Schaefer, it's very, very hard to stop.
So Meath, as I mentioned, strong favourites against Tipperary. The big conversation point around Meath this year has been the refereeing of Vicky Wall. Her sin binning against Kildare, you could say, went viral, and it certainly led to a lot of discussion. It feels like a tired conversation at this point. Doireann, the physicality in the game is something that's constantly brought up. What are you thinking when you see that? Do you immediately think to the idea that the rules need to change immediately?
Yeah, like, I think what the men's footballers have done this year, changing the rules, reviewing the rules within season, has been class. Like that, contact on the kick-out rule was reviewed and voted on and changed in season. And I don't really understand why you'd have to wait until 2026. We're only at All-Ireland quarterfinal stages, so absolutely I'd be in favour of rules being reviewed in season. That charging one is very, very tricky, because Vicky Wall is, so strong. She's an absolute unit when she's running at you, and I just think she's very hard to stop. And like, sometimes I feel like she gets the ball, or not just Vicky, like a player gets the ball and turns, and straight away the defender's in their face. So how would you put the brakes on? Like, you've literally just caught the ball and turned, and you're blown for charging, but they're just in that close proximity to you, which a good defender should do, So it's very hard to call. And sometimes I do find it's a case of, like, a stronger player running up against a weaker player, and girls are encouraged to go to the gym, you're encouraged to build up that strength, so then to be kind of getting punished for it. But it's a tricky one, because I've been called, I've been on both sides of that rule, and when a player is called for barging on you, it's a huge boost to your team. And then the other side, I don't really think the player in possession is ever trying to foul, if that makes sense. Like, I'm trying to create something or make something happen. I'm not, worried about pulling a jersey or making contact. I'm trying to create an opportunity. So I would be of the opinion that the person of the ball shouldn't be blown. But again, there's loads of opinions on that one, isn't there?
Yeah, and also there's a difference between being blown for it and it's a free out and then being sent to the sin bin, which just seems like a complete overreaction. If it's a free out for barging, that can happen in the men's game as well. And sometimes it's the right call, sometimes it's the wrong call. But the sin bin just seemed like a massive overreaction.
Yeah, that's nearly farcical, isn't it? Because like when you're in possession of the ball, you've no choice, but sometimes the player is just there, and to go to the sin bin, lose a player for 10 minutes is an extremely harsh penalty for that foul. I think if you're in possession of the ball, the maximum penalty that is a free out. And sometimes those are harsh calls. But it's never, in my eyes anyway, a sin bin, unless you're leading with the elbow or, something like that. But 9 times out of 10, never a sin bin, no.
It seems like an extraordinarily difficult thing to dispossess an opposing player. Well, not always. It sometimes seems that it's very, very difficult. Is that your experience when you're playing the game as well, or is it just an art form that you perfect over a period of time?
It's massively dependent on the referee, and you'll notice in the first couple of minutes, or if you've played with that referee before, you'll have known from previous experience. But it depends on the way the refs the game, and I know they're all being trained the same and being told the same thing, but it's a judgment call 9 times out of 10. So it is, subjective, and unfortunately that can be really frustrating for a player. You're doing tackling drills at training. I'm trying to stop the player up. The next player is getting in behind me to try, make contact and be the second tackler in. And we spend so much time practicing that. And then, you're told to make contact on the ball, in and out, no slapping, all that. And you're sometimes, we're cynically fouling to try slow down the play. But 9 times out of 10, the player is genuinely trying to tackle properly and get a turnover. And a lot of refs don't like the contact. So it can be frustrating for players, especially defenders, if you're trying to stop the likes of Schaefer O'Shea, what you do, she kind of has a big advantage there when you're trying to get hands on and stuff. So yeah, the physicality in the game, and I think that will dictate Cork Dublin massively on Saturday. Like Sinead Goldrick, Leah Caffrey, Martha Byrne, they're all hugely physical players. Is the ref going to allow them to be that physical? And then you lead to sin bins. So yeah, it's massively up to the referee, which is a tricky one.
It's mad, really, isn't it? It's almost rugby level of analysis of the officials that you have to do before the games if you want to get an edge on your opponent. But it's going to be a fascinating weekend. Doireann, great to chat to you. Do you want to call them before you go? I mean, you've called Cork to beat Dublin.
Yes.
I presume Kerry are going to be Kildare, given you said that they're wearing that favourites tag for the All-Irelands. And then Galway, Waterford, Meath, Tip, who progresses from those games?
I've been very impressed with Waterford all year. I think I'm going to give Waterford the nod there, and I'm going to stick with Meath. So 3 Munster teams, Kerry, Cork, Waterford, and I'm going to go with Meath against Tip.
Doireann O'Sullivan, great to chat to you. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks very much.